Tara, but you can call me Mother, and welcome to the Studio Yutani Megacast. Today, I have two special guests with me from Effekt podcast. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dave from the Effekt podcast, and my co-host.
I'm Matthew.
Awesome. So these guys helped write the scenario for Alien, the role-playing game, and as people who are familiar with my work on the role-playing game, I helped with the stellar cartography, I helped with a bit of canon and stuff like that. But these guys were responsible for writing what we call a scenario, so people who can kind of do a cinematic play or play the game can kind of get a bit of a taste of what it's like to play the RPG with a pre-written story. So guys, how did that happen?
I guess it's a question of how there's a long story and a short story, I guess. So
let's do the long one. Why not?
We can do the long one. We've got time. Well, otherwise, we've got nothing else to say anything to you, have
we? Well, speak for yourself.
So maybe I'll start.
Go on.
The year before last, now we were doing an interview with Nils from Free League for our own podcast, Effekt. Effektpodcast.org if people want to find it. And
they're spelt the Swedish way. Effekt with a K.
Effekt with a K, yes, spelt the Swedish way. And Nils said, "Oh, we've got a really exciting project that we can't tell you about yet." And we were desperate to know. And then a bit later on, he said, "Okay, we want to." We're going to ask your help with the project, but before we can say anything at all about it, we've got to send you a non-disclosure agreement. So we were then very excited by this and thinking, this is obviously somebody else's IP. And Dave, do you want to pick up the story? Because we were thinking, oh, what could it be? Could it be The Thing, for example?
Which is, one of my favourite films of all time, along with Alien. And so I think we were hoping. We hadn't really talked about what it was going to be, but I think I was certainly hoping it would be Alien. There are other candidates out there like Blade Runner and probably going to be loads. But so we got that, and our commission at that point was to write convention scenario for initially just for UK Games Expo here in the UK in Birmingham, which happens at the end of May. And
normally
we were Normally, not this year. Yeah, August this year, if we're lucky.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. So we were delighted to get that opportunity, and then we sort of cracked on with the process of working out how to do it. We decided to be a bit more ambitious than just do one scenario, so we actually created three, all based around Hadley's Hope. The first one was a kind of a heist. Called Hope's Last Hand, where
Hope's Last Hand. They were raiding the casino.
Yep, and getting out underneath all the terror that was going on. The second one was called Hope's Last Dance, which was the sort of the brass band of the colony had been practicing, and when they stopped practicing, they suddenly realised everything's gone quiet and they've got to escape. And then the last one was the remaining marshals, Hope's Last Stand. And it was aiming at trying to save the colony from the xenomorphs, and we were trying to pull out in each of those the three key kind of themes for the game: the space trucker, the colonist, and then the colonial marine angles. Do you want to pick up the story there, Matt?
Yeah, so we'd done that way for two reasons. One, of course, is they wanted us to run a lot of games and they wanted them to be short, so they were they gave us a 2-hour time slot constant throughout the day. And we thought if we're running the same thing every 2 hours, we would go mad. So we wanted to give ourselves a bit of variety, but we were really excited. Having seen the pretty much final draft of the rules, we realised, that it wasn't simply going to be bug hunting aliens. There was a whole universe out there that you could explore, and we wanted to give a little flavour of it. We'd also seen, of course, though, that at that time, aliens themselves didn't exist. So we had Andrew Gasker's scenario that became Chariot of the Gods in our hands. And, we had all the neomorphs, shall we call them, and stuff like that. And we thought, if we're doing this as a taster session for people who're just hearing about the game for the first time at UK Games Expo or only a few weeks beforehand, they'd be really disappointed if they didn't get Aliens. And we thought, there was a bit of pushback on this one, but there's a bit of
a story here though, because obviously we had the starter set. Sorry to cut in, Matt.
Go ahead.
We had the starter set, and that didn't have the Xenomorphs, the XX-121s in it. And I mailed Thomas and said, look, if we're writing this scenario for you, we want to include the aliens, as Matt said. Can you forward us the rules you've got? And didn't hear anything for a couple of days. Then I got in touch with him and was like, well, we're going to need these. And they was kind of like, yeah. And then eventually he admitted that they hadn't written any. So I said, okay, we might need some rules for that.
Yeah.
And he said, well, why don't you write them, Dave? So I went, okay. So I did. And then those rules, pretty much, with a few tweaks, are the rules that I wrote for the convention are the rules that ended up in the book, pretty much, with a couple of tweaks in there. But on the whole, things like the signature attacks. There was a point when I was designing them that I spoke to Thomas and said, look, I'm a bit concerned about how dangerous we're making them. And he went, make them a little more badass, was the quote he used. So, okay, fine. Make them badass and then let it play out. And that was brilliant, yeah. Yeah. Sorry for cutting in there, Matt.
Yeah, well, that's fine. He does this all the time on our own podcast, so I'll just get used to it.
Otherwise, Matt never shuts up.
I love the dynamic between both of you. Is this what it's like listening to your podcast?
That is the appeal of our podcast. We are frequently told by our listeners is we're like an old married couple. So we'd got this set of rules actually, and the first thing we wanted to do, of course, was to play them ourselves to get an idea of what was going on. And we had a cunning idea. We cover a lot of Free Leagues games, and we thought initially, oh, wouldn't it be fun if we said we're going to be doing Tales from the Loop, but in the space, give people Tales from the Loop characters, which are all kids, and they're exploring through the sewers and stuff, and then like Newt, they look down through a hatch and see their father exploding in a gore, and then I'll say, right now, let's hand over these alien character sheets instead, because you're not playing Tales from the Loop after all. We thought that was a bad switch to make on our friends.
I thought that was a bad switch to make.
Yes, you did.
I thought having 11-year-olds watching their parents die horribly was probably not the best thing for a convention as well.
But we did that. That's what brought us to Hadley's Hope, and we said, let's do Hadley's Hope, because that's if you like the beginning of the story, or where the story of the movies leaves off. Okay, yeah, there were 2 or 3 further movies, but there were two. I think
the other thing with Hadley's Hope is there was a bit of space in Hadley's Hope that the story hadn't really been told. Even though the book River of Pain is out there, there's still space between the lines of that book and between Aliens for this game to play out, and it's kind of squeezed in perfectly almost.
Yeah, and we thought that there's a really good opportunity to show different aspects of life as well. Although it doesn't make the final cut in Hope's Last Stand, for example, I was really keen to have the Union Brass Band, because for me, Alien is all about capital versus labour in a way. And, we're with the working class in the first movie, at least. And I wanted to portray the working class, and I'm sure they would be trying to unionize. And so, although it turned out to be a bit of a joke in that, we had people with personal agendas that they had to save their tuba or their double bass or whatever.
Their cello, yeah.
Yeah.
They would rather die than leave the cello behind. Yeah.
Yeah, we created those musicians for that sort of political reason.
Yeah.
And so we did those 3 different aspects.
Yeah, and that leads nicely on to how we actually came about to turn that into Hope's Last Day. So at that point, in the production of the Alien book, sorry, I've just been invaded by my wife.
That's okay, Dave. I'm just going to take advantage. I can't quite remember now in my head whether that approach had come before or after UK Games Expo.
It was after.
It was after. So
at the point of UK Games Expo, they'd obviously, we had these games, they played them, we'd seen some of the feedback from the players, which was, we were delighted, it was all excellent, really good, everyone seemed to love it. And we hadn't really expected much more than that, but in the final stages of putting the Alien core book together, it became clear they had so much stuff and they had so much content that they were going to run out of space for Chariot of the Gods, which was going to be, Drew Gaskell's scenario was going to be the scenario in the book to begin with. And they'd learnt lessons from previous games they'd published, Coriolis in particular, where they felt they'd put too much in the book, it was too big, and they didn't want to make the same mistake again. So we were then approached by Thomas to say, you've got these scenarios, they're short, could you turn one of them, and they chose Hope's Last Dance, but changing the band into just a bunch of maintenance workers, could you turn that into the game for the core book? And I sort of went, yes. And who wouldn't say yes, and then that got us into the position where we then working that up into Hope's Last Day.
Wow. Because like behind the scenes, a lot of this stuff was already determined. Before I joined the project, I think I joined back in January of 2019, roundabout.
Yeah.
So when were you notified that you were going to be in the core book instead?
That was quite late. It would have been probably June.
June,
I think.
Okay. Yeah, because I was putting the finishing touches on the star map at that point.
And we were given very, very short deadlines, which was fine because the vast majority of the stuff was there. We knew what we needed to do. We just needed to brush it up, get it in the right format, get it in the right way, and get it looked over by Thomas. And Drew obviously put in some canon kind of stuff that some of the original ideas in it were slightly conflicting with canon, so we had to modify those a little bit.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to speak about. Now, one of the characters which is in River of Pain is in this scenario. What made you guys decide to put her in it?
I think I wanted to be as kind of all authentic as possible. So it's Hadley's Hope. People know a lot about Hadley's Hope. Where we could, I wanted to introduce names and characters from the canon into that to give people more familiarity with the atmosphere and the location they're playing. There was quite a lot of stuff that I put in that was then, well, quite a lot. There were a few references I put in that were taken out, just because they didn't add very much.
Yeah.
And we, I think it's fair to admit, just in this little crowd here, nobody else is listening.
Just with the three of us.
River of Pain very much. And for me, the thing that really upsets me about River of Pain, and I'm going to bang on about it at every opportunity I get, so Dave, forgive me, is River of Pain is all about a group of colonial marines
on
Hadley's Hope.
Yeah.
Before the colonial marines arrive on Hadley's Hope. And
yeah, there should have been colonial marshals. I know.
Exactly. And luckily, in Drew, we've got an ally there. So I'd already, without knowing that Drew was a big fan of Outland himself, I'd already said to Dave, we're not having these bloody marines. We're going to have colonial marshals in Hope's Last Stand. We're not having marines.
The militia, as it turned out.
The militia, yeah. And so that's what we created. So we'd already diverged a bit from River of Pain. And I think there were some things where, we then added other things in from River of Pain to kind of acknowledge that that was a source.
Like it's interconnected universe sort of thing.
Yeah. but only a couple of things really got through, partly because of the word count. When we interviewed Andrew Gasker, he was saying, well, the problem is I just write too much. They asked 30,000 words and I give them 90,000 words.
Yeah, I had to read all those words too.
Yeah, I'm currently plowing through the latest version of Destroyer as well.
And because we'd created 3 separate scenarios with little bits of detail in, actually, our word count, if we just handed that over to Freely, would have been huge. I mean, I had no time for this. So, Dave, you did all the rewrite. And what was the word count and what did you have to get it down to?
Well, the word count had to come down to 5,000. And I got it down to 5,000, but it was difficult. So there was one of the things that to digress slightly, that I love about this game in particular is the number of people new to role playing it's introduced to the hobby. And there are a lot of people who are enormous Alien fans but have never played an RPG in their life. They're now playing role playing games. They're playing Alien because of this very game, and that's brilliant. And there were so many great moments when we were running them at UK Games Expo. I could sit on here for hours just telling some of the stories that were just fabulous moments, sort of unique moments of the way the game played out. And I wanted to try and keep quite a lot of the setup that led to those moments in the final game. And there was one moment where Thomas just said, right, we're losing the basement, don't need the basement, there's the words we can get rid of. And I went back to him and said, no, there's lots of good stuff that goes on in the basement. So we had a negotiation and an argument about it, and we then had a basement that was much smaller, but it worked.
I never made it to the basement. No, I want to go back.
A lot of people don't, but it's there as well. I think one of the other things that struck me about writing this game was I knew it had to be short. 5,000 words isn't a lot. I knew it was a 1-act game, leaping straight into the 3rd act of a cinematic scenario. But Hadley's Hope was such a location that I wanted to ensure that the work that Matt and I put into making Hadley's Hope as a location was reflected, and that it's there for people to run other scenarios through. So if they want to run Aliens, they can. They've got all the information they need. If they want to run a game where they're playing Newt and Newt's friends, they can. They've got all the information they need. It's all there. And that was a key thing for me in writing it, in making sure that we kept to that. There was one other thing as well that we heard from Thomas, that there was some debate over whether we should use Hadley's Hope at all, or make it a more generic colony somewhere, because of the canon issues, I guess. And I think it was absolutely the right decision to go with Hadley's Hope, because everybody loves it. All the Alien fans are immediately hooked into it. It's Hadley's Hope. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I've lived there, kind of thing. If you're a fan. And that was a really, really good decision.
Yeah, when I heard that there was a scenario taking place in Hadley's Hope and it was going to be in the core book, I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. Because you're right, everyone wants to kind of be back there, because that's where, arguably, one of the greatest Alien films took place, and to be able to be there and go through the same places and see places where characters we know in the movies have been, it's amazing. Or being able to submerge yourself in that sort of reality for a little while and go, wow, I've actually been to Hadley's Hope in a way, and that's kind of cool. Apart from the RPG, what were your personal experiences with the Alien franchise? Like when did you first encounter it? How did you guys become fans? And it lead you to this path of writing this scenario?
I'm just trying to think when I first encountered it, but I was too young to go and see it at the cinema. And I remember, I'm just trying to think, because I can remember what house I was living in at the time. And so it must have been before I was 10. When did it come out?
79, wasn't it? It came out.
79? But that would make me 11. Maybe 11. Anyway, so I couldn't see it at the cinema, but I could get the Alan Dean Foster adaptation. So I read that aged 11 and then waited for, I don't know how long before I actually saw the movie.
Oh my goodness.
And so I remember... Sorry, Matt, go on.
You go ahead, Dave.
Sorry. Yeah, so
I get used to this, don't I?
You guys are adorable. I love this.
I haven't been called adorable for a very long time. That's really kind. Thank you. My first memory of Alien was, I don't know, I would have been 12 or 13. I'm a bit younger than Matt, as you can obviously tell.
Okay, yeah, bring that up.
And when I was a kid, back in the early 80s, I had a little black and white television in my bedroom. We weren't really allowed TVs, but I had a little black and white one with a little earpiece thing. Nothing like these. These are modern versions, some horrible, scuzzy little thing. And my dad was always quite strict when I was quite young. And I remember listening and watching Alien in my bedroom late at night when I should have been gone to bed, when I would have been about 12 or 13 or something, on the black and white TV, and still being kind of horrified by it. And, I knew what was coming. I'd seen they have the movie picture books that come out with all the photos in it. So I'd seen one of those before I saw it. So I knew what was coming. But still, it was an enduring moment that has been seared into my memory when I was 12 years old or 13.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would be seriously traumatizing, I bet.
That might explain a lot, possibly, over the years. Yeah. And
That's
since
great.
then, so I've just been a great fan since then. I remember as a kid, I had one of those 12-inch Alien toys.
Oh yeah.
I think you can probably sell on eBay for about £1 million now.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
one in the box could be worth about $10,000 or something like that.
10,000. Wow. I wish I kept that. Blimey. But that's long gone. But yeah, so I've been a fan ever since.
Oh wow, that's cool. As people are watching know now that you guys run your own podcasts. When did your podcast start up?
Well, that was Matt's
our
idea.
podcast, of course, isn't alien orientated. We started about 3 years ago, didn't we, Dave?
Almost exactly 3 years ago, yeah.
With Coriolis. And I have to tell the story of Dave's wedding because it's really important. Yeah. This is his second marriage. We didn't get invited to the first one. I don't know why, but I did get invited to my wife and kids to the second one. Very lovely. And at the reception, rather than sitting next to his wife and being all lovey-dovey, he came over to say, "You've got to join this Kickstarter for this game, this brilliant game called Coriolis, which is 3 Leagues Out, a science fiction game. It's great, you really got to do it." And he just, for most of the reception, he was persuading me to buy this game.
You must also tell Clara what my favourite wedding present was as well.
Okay, yeah. They see, I give good present. So
anyway, yeah, carry on.
Before his wedding, the 7th edition of Call of Cthulhu had come out, which is a venerable old role-playing game, and this 7th edition had seen the company almost go bust. They did a really bad Kickstarter for it. And it took a lot of time to develop, but eventually it was out there and it was in the shops just before the wedding. So I got that for Dave. So Dave and I have been playing role-playing games since you were 11, Dave, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
since 1980, yeah.
Oh wow,
now,
that's a long time.
And there's an age that we have, and it's got a number 5 in it, but I'm not going to go into great detail.
Yeah.
So he persuaded me to get this Kickstarter, and I rather reluctantly then looked at the Kickstarter and thought, well, he wants me, I'll get the PDF of this, just the basic level, you know how it is. And I phoned him up and I said, so I'm meant to be getting this, am I? And he said, yeah, but I want you to run it. And I'm not running it because I want to play in this universe. So then I thought, well, if I'm going to run it...
I always buy the games that I want to play and end up running them. Whereas this time, I was determined I wanted to play Coriolis, so I was determined that Matt was going to run the game for me.
So that's another thing I was going to ask. Like, do you guys have a preference on whether you're a participant or GM?
I don't think we do, really, do we? I mean, we take turns.
I love both. Yeah.
We do. We always have since our school days in a larger group than have now survived. We always used to take turns to run different games and things like that. But anyway, I ended up running Coriolis for Dave. But when I got the books and read them, I was blown away by the system, which is pretty much the same system that you see in Alien. You know, there's
Not
a
entirely,
different push
yeah,
mechanic. It's slightly more simplified in Alien than it is in Coriolis.
For people who aren't familiar with the RPG, could you give an explanation of how it's different from the regular run-of-the-mill stuff that you get?
Well, what I really like about what's called the Year Zero engine, which powers a lot of Free League's games, is it's really simple to pick up, as you've discovered, because I know you're relatively new to role-playing games. You know, you add up a number of dice according to, broadly speaking, your ability and your skill. You roll those dice, you get a single 6. You're a winner. You've solved the problem generally. So that's a nice simple system you can teach very quickly. In Coriolis, what I liked about it was also subtly nuanced in combat. So extra successes allow you to do extra things and spend them in interesting ways that from a lot of I don't want to bore your listeners with. I could go into a great treatise about the development.
Too late, Matt. Too late.
But they start off effectively as war games, so they're kind of very martial. They become very quickly in the early years quite simulations, so they're trying to recreate actual physics. They get more and more complex. There was an original Alien role-playing game, or Aliens role-playing game, back in the early 80s that was written by actual rocket scientists. And so, you know,
that explains so much.
So they had recreated the physics of all these guns shooting their guns off, and you know, every shot you took about 3 different rolls to find out whether it hit or not. It was amazing. Well, it wasn't amazing. It was dreadful. But that was of its time, and here we had something that had the simplicity of modern role-playing games. A lot of modern role-playing games are really easy to pick up, but it had a little bit of crunch, of the old-fashioned style crunch about tactics and things in it. And for me, it was a perfect combination. So I remember kind of going out on a walk, having read this through, and on the walk, phoning up Dave and saying, Dave, we've got to start a podcast about Coriolis. Let's do this thing. And it was as simple as that. And we did. We did one episode just to see whether it would get any listeners. And we had such positive feedback that here we are.
Oh,
3 years later, yeah.
Are there any known competition with you guys out there? Like, is there? Do you have arch enemies?
We do. Dare we name them?
Why not?
This is a very touchy point, actually. If I don't know if you want to explain it, Matt, but I'll just caveat what Matt's going to say with we love the guys from this podcast. We know him a bit. It's really good. But take it away, Matt. Go on. Fill in our little gripe about it.
Actually, for those of you on the other side of the world like you are, this particular podcast is transnational in a similar way. It's hosted by 2 guys, and Liam comes from New Zealand, and Matt is
in Germany,
English, I think, but lives in Germany. And they run a podcast called Mud and Blood, and they started off being all about Warhammer fantasy roleplay, I think, initially. But kind of as they were starting this podcast off, they got into Free League games quite a lot. And so they do quite a lot of stuff about Free League games as well. They've got more patrons than we've got. Matt works really, really hard on all the social media.
Yeah,
he runs the
ever present.
The Free League Year Zero Discord.
Yeah.
So yeah, he is our nemesis. Curse him! Curse him! This is our territory.
I don't think he knows. I don't think he knows he's our nemesis, though. I don't think we've told him.
I keep telling him, but I think he thinks I'm joking.
Well, it's now out in the world.
It's out there now. Yeah, maybe we better message him and say, Matt, just in case, if you hear something, we don't mean it really. Yeah,
but no, he's a lovely guy, and he's doing a lot for the Year Zero community as well. And he's just set up a YouTube stream all about Forbidden Lands, which, again, curse him! We've got an excellent Forbidden Lands bit of our podcast.
Yes.
But no, all to better. You know, what I love about this community, whether it's in role-playing games or in the alien fandom, you know, you've generally got people who are passionate about what they're doing, and their work, like yours, you know, then informs the canon and stuff like that. So I love the way that, although in the great scheme of things, compared to, say, football fans or something, we are small in number, I like to think we've got an enormous impact on the, be it the fandom, you know, the franchises or the games that we love.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's such an inclusive and fun community to be a part of as well. It's you know, role-playing gamers and gamers generally tend to be you know, the best kind of people, open-minded and friendly, and they can have a joke with them. And, you know, a bit like Matt and I here, you know, Matt from Blood and Mud, I'm sure he'll sling us some mud and blood when he gets the chance once he's heard this. So bring it on. It's fun. It's fun. It's all done in the best possible taste, to quote Kenny Everett.
I just want to get a chip off my shoulder if I can.
Another one.
We've also now got competition from Free League themselves, because they used to do a podcast in Swedish, which of course had a tiny Swedish audience, and have now started doing episodes in English. And so, you know, that really is getting on my turkey.
That's our job.
Worse than that, on the last episode of the most recent episode of their English podcast, they said they have a little section where everybody around the table talks about something that they're loving at the moment. And Matthias Johnson Hark, who is, frankly, I think, Dave, I think he's our bitch. He was saying he
might think that we're his bitches, actually, rather than that way around, Matt.
But he sent out a love bomb to the Mud and Blood podcast by saying how good it was, how long it was, and it gave people time to talk. And I'm going,
hang on, what about us?
We give him time to talk.
We've interviewed him about 10 times.
I like to believe that on one of their Swedish versions, they'd already sent out a love bomb to us, as opposed to. So I'm very jealous, actually. Yeah, I'm really jealous.
Well,
yeah, Matt hasn't shut up about it for the last week, so hopefully now it's off his chest. He can move on.
Now it's off my chest. Yeah.
Well, I decided to go with you guys for my podcast, so cool.
Excellent.
Woo! Yeah, excellent. One up. Excellent.
Poor Drew, he missed out. Like, do you have any advice for people who want to GM? Because I'm new to this, I'm thinking of becoming a GM for scenarios in future, so that my friend Chris doesn't have to do it all the time. But I don't even know where to start. What sort of advice do you have for people like me?
I think my number one would be, don't be daunted. Just give it a go. It's not a test as a GM. You're not being tested. You're part of the storytelling group. And even though there is a responsibility on you to sort of lay out the situation, let the dice make the rules, and make the dice make the decisions. Give your players space to discuss stuff and make their own minds up. Don't be frightened about winging it a little bit if they go off in a direction that you don't expect, which will happen every single time. You don't need to prep too much. Matt can talk about that. He's a big on the low prep side. I think I prep more than he does generally.
You possibly need to prep a bit more than I do.
Yeah, but you can get away with really low prep, and enjoy it. It's supposed to be fun, and don't worry if you feel like you've made a mistake. Chances are nobody's noticed. The one thing I love about the community, that beyond my old experience with Dungeons and Dragons, I haven't played D&D properly for donkey's years, but back in the day, you used to get the situation where the GM would say, or the DM would say, here's the rule, this is what's happening. And somebody around the table would go, aha, no, but on page 973, paragraph 4 of the monster manual, whatever, it says this. And you'd spend an hour arguing over the rules in the rule book. Now, some people love that. I hate it. So when I'm GM, if you're contesting the rules, I'll either accept it straight away or we just move on and I'll check it later on. So pace is also
Interesting.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm usually quite pedantic, being a helper of canon, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I love rubbing in people's faces things I know. So I will have to ease up on that, I guess, to become an efficient GM.
Well, no, I think it's a GM that puts you in a great position because you can improvise off stuff you know.
Yeah.
So at some point when they say, right, we're not going to fly to this system, we're going to fly to this system over here, and you're like, well, I would be doing that because I don't know what that system over there is, but you've probably got a pretty good guess. Even if you don't know, you could, got a bit of an idea, a few ideas or a few snippets of information about it, upon which you can build a whole new world. So yeah, I think in your position, if you're starting off as a game mother in Alien and you happen to have an encyclopedic knowledge of the Alien universe, that's not going to be a disadvantage for you.
No.
If you were my player, I'd be well pissed off every time I said, here we are on Grebus 29. You'd go, there's no such Grebus 29. There are only 27 to 28 or whatever. That would really piss me off if you were my player. But
we'll have to play sometime.
And that's what I try and do as often as possible. You've got to try and catch him out.
Yeah.
I think
whereas I correct Dave on the rules more often. I also want to flag up that we recognised quite early on that there are going to be a lot of people who are new to game mothering with the Alien thing. And last year in November, we did an episode called As Good a Place as Any to Take Your First Steps to Heaven. Do you know that reference?
No.
No, I don't think anybody did except
Alien
Matthew.
3 from the Prison Planet. Can't remember who says it.
Hang on, that's not fair, Matt. That's not fair. You've tested Clara with an alien thing and she didn't get it. You should at least warn her. That's completely unfair.
It's okay because everyone knows that I don't particularly like Alien 3. That's a blasphemy. Cool. But it's there's such great script writing in that film, and that's what I appreciate about it.
And that was the only one I saw at the cinema. Well, no, I saw Alien 4 again at the cinema, but it was the first one I saw at the cinema. Anyway, we did an episode in November called As Good a Place as Any to Take Your First Steps to Heaven, and that is full of advice for new GMs from around the world. We got people off the RPG Logic podcast, and got people who'd played games with us and were becoming new GMs. So there's a lot of advice for new GMs in that episode.
Great. Well, I'll make sure I post a link to that on my blog, and I'll make sure I listen to that as well. Now, are you guys on any other social medias apart from Twitter? You guys have a YouTube?
So with in this, we had a YouTube channel which we started to try and put our podcast, our audio podcast, on YouTube, because of course YouTube comes with free subtitles, and we try and be as accessible as possible. So we started doing that. I've got to say, it's not a great task putting the podcast on YouTube. It's not an easy thing to do. Hopefully it's going to get easier for us. But with this lockdown, we, of course, have been doing a lot more Zoom gaming than we ever did before. We're very much face-to-face fans. And we thought, since we've got Zoom and we've got a YouTube channel, we'll start putting our games on YouTube as well. And we've got some Alien games on there, haven't we, that people can watch?
We have. I ran. So we had a little convention online for our patrons a couple of weekends ago, and we had 5 games, I think, over the weekend. One of them was an Alien game run by me, which was the convention scenario that I've written for Free League for this year's conventions. Now, this year's conventions aren't happening yet, so whether it'll get to be played at a convention at any point, we don't know. Hopefully some conventions will start to happen. So on our YouTube feed, we've got a playthrough of that scenario called Home Sweet Home. It's spoilers. If you were going to go and play it at a convention, don't watch it. But if you want to watch it, it's there on our YouTube channel.
Cool. I'll make sure I include a link to that as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's not a very easy one to find at the moment, partly because Dave has been hosting games on Victory Condition Gaming. So every time somebody types in search Effekt, it's Victory Condition Gaming that comes up. But if you do Effekt Home Sweet Home, Dave hasn't yet run that on Victory Condition Gaming. So hopefully that'll get us somewhere near the top of your search list. And
So
if any of your listeners would like to subscribe to our channel,
YouTube channel.
we're just about
Please
something
do.
less
Please
than
do.
20 players away, 20 subscribers away from having 100. And when we've got 100, we will then be able to get ourselves an easy to quote a YouTube
URL.
C/Effekt URL that we can point people
We'll
to.
do our best to make that happen.
Thank you. Please.
Are you guys on Facebook as well in the Free League?
Yeah, you can search for us under our old name on Facebook, the Coriolis Effekt. We're there, and we've got quite a lively little community of followers there. They won't let us change it because we started off as the Coriolis Effekt when we just talked about Coriolis, and Facebook won't let us change our name at the moment to Effekt.
What a pain.
It's a bit irritating.
And we're also called the Coriolis Cast under Twitter as well.
Twitter.
Okay, fantastic. I'll make sure I include those links as well.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you guys would like to say to fans of the Alien universe who are watching this today on Alien Day?
Buy it.
Yes.
Buy it.
Remember, guys, it is
enjoy it.
50% off in PDF form if you go to Drive-Thru RPG to get the PDF. It's 20% off if you order it from Free League while all this COVID nonsense is going on. There's never been a better time to buy it.
No, indeed.
And can we say a little bit about what we're doing currently, Dave?
Are you guys allowed? I don't want to get you guys in trouble.
I don't know whether we are, but you know about it.
Oh, yes, I do. I know everything.
Yeah.
My mother.
I'm not sure at this moment.
No, but we have seen the future, and it is good. Let us say that.
Yeah.
So people should subscribe to your channel and stay tuned, basically.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, please.
Sounds good. Now, as a part of our Alien Day giveaway, Thomas at Free League has kindly donated the RPG bundle available to a random winner of my choice, I guess.
Random.
Well, random selection, I'm sure you mean.
I think, I think you might need to look up the definition of random there, Clara.
Well, I'm putting it in the hands of an AI, so I'm collating the information, and then this AI will determine who gets this bundle. But I know a lot of people have expressed interest. So if you don't win this bundle, it's not a big deal. You could still go out and get this game. And if you need some convincing, I'm pretty sure Effekt will be able to like convince you online. Maybe do an impromptu game. Who knows? We will get you somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's just look into this egg. It's completely fine.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Perfectly safe, I assure you. All right. Thanks for joining me, guys, for our special Alien Day Megacast.
Thank you for the invite. It's been a real pleasure.
An absolute pleasure. Thanks
it's a
for
lot of fun. I'll have to play with you guys sometime.
Somehow, I will get you
You'll
some
be more
of
than
these
welcome.
fabulous stickers that you liked on our tweet stream.
They're so shiny. I love it.
I went for the shiny ones this time.
Yes.
They're not that exciting, but they're like a badge of honor. If you roll if you roll 6 or more dice and then you push it and roll them again and still get no successes, you earn one of those stickers.
Oh wow! I should have like 5 of those at least.
I know.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for joining me, and everybody have a happy Alien Day.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Wash your hands.
to like, share, or support Studio Yutani on Patreon, and subscribe to yutani.studio to stay up to date. Transmission complete.